السلام علیکم. آج کا ٹاپک تھیوریٹیکل فریم ورک اور اس سے ہائپوتھیسز کو ڈیرائیو کرنا ہے. تھیوریٹیکل فریم ورک کو اگر دیکھیں تو دو لفظ بڑے امپورٹنٹ نظر آتے ہیں، ایک تھیوریٹیکل، دوسرا فریم ورک. تھیوریٹیکل کے اگر اس کو دوسرے انداز سے دیکھیں تو تھیوری کا لفظ اس میں زیادہ امپورٹنٹ نظر آتا ہے. So theory is something which we call as explanation of the observation, something which has been observed، اور وہ جو observe کیا ہے اس کو آپ phenomenon کی بات کر سکتے ہیں، آپ اسے reality کہہ سکتے ہیں. یہ observations ہمارے daily experiences میں آتی ہیں، realities are part of it، فینومینن بھی ہم اس کو کہتے ہیں. اب یہ جو ہم آبزرو کر رہے ہیں فینومینن یا ریالٹی، اس کو ہم ایکسپلین کرنا چاہتے ہیں، اس کی وضاحت کرنا چاہتے ہیں. یہ جو وضاحت ہم کریں گے یا ایکسپلین کریں گے تو اس میں آبویسلی وی ول یوز لاجک فار اٹ. اس میں ایک لفظ کی بات نہیں ہے، بہت سارے فکرے آئیں گے اور ان سینٹنسز کے مدد سے ہم ایکسپلین کرنے کی کوشش کرتے ہیں کہ یہ جو ریالٹی ہمیں نظر آ رہی ہے، جو فینومینن ہم دیکھ رہے ہیں، یہ ہاؤ اٹ از ایگزسٹنگ، ہاؤ اٹ از فنکشننگ، وائی از اٹ فنکشننگ. تو اس چیز کو ایکسپلین کرنے کے لیے جو ہم لفظ استعمال کر رہے ہیں وہ تھیوری کا لفظ ہے. دوسرے لفظوں میں theory is more like logical explanation of the phenomenon. phenomenon یا آپ اس کو reality کہہ رہے ہیں جس کو ہم نے observe کیا ہے. اس کے بیسس پر not only کہ ہم اس کو explain کر رہے ہیں، ہم اس کو understand کرنے کی کوشش کر رہے ہیں اسی logical explanation کے بیسس پر. اور اگر ہم اس کو ایکسپلین کر سکتے ہیں کہ اس کی وجوہات کیا ہے، اس کی اینٹیسیڈنٹس کیا ہے، تو ہم ایک لحاظ سے ہم اس کے بارے میں پریڈکشنز بھی کر سکتے ہیں. اور آپ کو یاد ہے کہ پریڈکشن جو ہے یہ ہمارے سائنٹیفک اپروچ کا بہت امپورٹنٹ آئی تھنک حصہ ہے. اور اگر ہم پریڈکشن کر سکتے ہیں کسی فینومینن کی ورکنگ کے بارے میں، so then perhaps we can also have some control on that phenomenon as well. So if we know what are the factors which are producing this particular reality, ان factors کو پھر ہم tinker کر سکتے ہیں، ان کو پھر ہم change کر سکتے ہیں، اور اس change میں ہم دیکھتے ہیں کہ ہمارا logic کیا ہے، اور اس بیسس پہ ہم کنٹرول اس فینومینن کو کر سکتے ہیں. اور جیسے کہ وہ فینومینن ہم دیکھ رہے ہیں کہ ہیومن بینگس کے ساتھ ہے، تو ان اینٹیسیڈنٹس کو ہم مینیپولیٹ کر کے وی کین برنگ چینج ان دیٹ ریالٹی، اینڈ دیٹ از ویئر دا تھیوری کمز. ایک لحاظ سے اگر میں اور اس وضاحت کروں تو تھیوری سمپلی is more like construction of statements. یہ اسٹیٹمنٹس ایسی ہیں جن کو آپ propositions بھی کہہ سکتے ہیں. تو دوسرے لفظوں میں ہم یہ کہہ رہے ہیں کہ theory is an interrelated set of propositions، اور یہ propositions جو ہیں ایک دوسرے کے ساتھ جڑی ہوئی ہیں، اور ایسے جڑی ہوئی ہیں کہ ایک پروپوزیشن دوسری کو جنریٹ کر رہی ہے، دوسری اس کے اگلی کو جنریٹ کر رہی ہے. اور اس چین آف پروپوزیشنز کو اگر ہم سامنے رکھیں تو یہی ہماری تھیوری ہے. سو تھیوری از نیسسری بیکاز اٹ ٹیلز اس ہاؤ ٹو پروسیڈ، ہاؤ ٹو موو فرام ون لیٹس سے point to the next and from the next to the next following one. تو اس طرح سے تھیوری کی جب ہم بات کر رہے ہیں تو it actually guides us to do the kind of research. It provides us the basis for undertaking certain steps for carrying out the study. تو تھیوری کا ریسرچ کے ساتھ بہت گہرا تعلق ہے. اس لحاظ سے ہم دیکھیں تو it is perhaps I would say one of the cornerstones of research. تھیوریز جو ہیں ہم کنسٹرکٹ کرتے ہیں, ہم کریٹ کرتے ہیں, ہم لاجک کے بیسس پہ ہم تھیوریز کو بناتے ہیں, کنسٹرکٹ کرتے ہیں, اور کہہ لیجئے کہ آبزرویشنز ہیں, آبزرویشنز کو آپ فیکٹس بھی کہہ سکتے ہیں. آبزرویشنز اگر فیکٹس بنتے ہیں تو obviously those are verified. So on the basis of these facts, on the basis of these observations, we create theories, we develop theories, we construct the theories, and the theories in a way somebody says these are not perhaps discovered, these are constructed, these are created, these are not sitting over there. This is the researcher, this is the observer who tries to look into the phenomenon, look into the reality, look into the logic, tries to find out how one observation is related with another one, how one, let's say, concept is related with another concept. تو ایک طرح سے جب میں بات کرتا ہوں کہ اس میں لاجک ہے, تو یہ لاجک ان سٹیٹمنٹس کو آپس میں جوڑنے میں مدد کرتا ہے. تو ایک لحاظ سے آپ یہ بھی کہہ سکتے ہیں کہ تھیوری از اے گلو which tries to, let's say, connect these different statements, different propositions, which emerge out of the observation of the reality. So that's why we look at the theoretical kind of basis, foundation, which helps us to carry out the study later on. دوسرا اس میں لفظ جو امپورٹنٹ نظر آ رہا ہے وہ فریم ورک ہے. نا فریم ورک کی اگر بات کریں تو دس از مور لائک اے اسٹرکچر. یہ ایسا ہی ہے اسٹرکچر جیسے کہ آپ کہہ رہے ہیں کہ کوئی گھر بناتا ہے تو گھر بنانے سے پہلے اس گھر کا ایک بلو پرنٹ بنایا جاتا ہے, اس کا ایک ڈیزائن بنایا جاتا ہے, اور یہ جو اسٹرکچر ہے, جو گھر کا ڈیزائن ہے, دیٹ بیکمس دی بیسس فار کیرینگ آؤٹ دیٹ پروجیکٹ آف لیٹس سے کنسٹرکٹنگ دی ہاؤس. اسی طرح سے جب ہم ریسرچ کی بات کرتے ہیں تو جو ہم ریسرچ کر رہے ہیں اس کا ایک ڈیزائن بنایا جاتا ہے, اس کا ایک فریم ورک بنایا جاتا ہے, and that framework actually guides us how to proceed. This structure is actually, this structure provides us, let's say, foundation, different pillars, and stronger the pillars, stronger the foundation, I think the stronger the building which is to be constructed on that structure. تو اس لحاظ سے جو فریم ورک ہے اگر وہ ہمارا بہت اسٹرانگ ہے, اس کے پیچھے لاجیکل آرگیومنٹ جو ہے بہت اسٹرانگ ہے, اور وہ لاجیکل آرگیومنٹس آر گلوڈ ود ایچ ادر, تھیوری نے اس کو سپورٹ کیا ہے, تو وہ جو فاؤنڈیشن بنے گی اس کے بیسس پر جو ہم ریسرچ کریں گے دیٹ ول بی ویری ساؤنڈ کائنڈ آف ریسرچ, دیٹ ول بی ویری سالڈ کائنڈ آف ریسرچ. تو اس لحاظ سے ہم یہ کہہ رہے ہیں کہ تھیوری پرووائڈز اس دی لاجیکل کائنڈ آف ایکسپلینیشن آف دی فینومینن, اور اس کے بیسس پر ہم فریم ورک بناتے ہیں. فریم ورک ایکچولی انکلوڈز لاٹس آف کانسیپٹس, اور وہ کانسیپٹس جو ہیں ان کو ہم کوشش کرتے ہیں کہ آپس میں انٹر ریلیٹ کریں. اب concept, you know, concept is more like imagination, it's more like observation, it's more like an image of the reality. So we have to look into lots of concepts. These concepts, when we try to interpret that, I think theory emerges out of that, and theory helps in the interpretation of those concepts. The reality which is observed, which is conceived, which is imagined, now that reality has to be explained, put before others, shared with others. And when we share with others, we try to give label to that imagination or that conception of the reality. And that's a label, that's a name which we give to that reality. Now, these names are constructed, created by the people, by the researchers. They might borrow them from different, let's say, sources, from other subjects, from the local culture as well. So these are the concepts, and we try to look into a number of concepts if we have to develop a theory. Concept के अगर दूसरे लफ्जों में कहूँगा, it's more like abstraction of the reality. You may not call it a reality, but something which stands for that reality. We look at, let's say, achievement. Achievement is a conception of the reality. Now, what is achievement? How do we look at achievement? How do we define that achievement? What is the picture of that achievement? Now, that picture has to be given a label, and people, the researchers, have given this label to that reality as an achievement. Now, what is that? We will look into that a little later. But at this time, I am just saying that the concept is an imagination of the reality. That's what people perceive about that reality. That's the picture of that reality. And people the researchers try to give a label to that reality. Now, concepts are very much related with another, I think, term which we call as variable. Now, when we look at the concept, that's very abstract level kind of situation. If we can measure that concept, if we can, let's say, look into its levels of that reality, if we can look into, let's say, different levels, we can have different categories of that, then we give the same concept another name which we call as variables. Now, variables are those concepts which can be observed for its measurement. There could be certain items which are physically available. We can observe them, we can see them, we can touch them. And there could also be the realities which we are unable to see directly, but indirectly we may be able to find out, identify it, we can locate it, we can measure it. So variable is a concept, but that concept which is observable, which can have different levels, which can be divided into different categories. I would say that every variable is a concept, but maybe every concept is not a variable. Now, that is, I think, the background with respect to what I was trying to share with you, that the theory and framework, theoretical framework is very essential, and stronger the theoretical framework, I think we are on a very sound footing to carry out our study. So that is how we look at the theoretical framework. Now, we have, as I said, observation about a particular phenomenon, and we call it as achievement motivation. Now, is achievement motivation a reality? Is it an observed phenomenon? You might see that this achievement motivation is such a concept, such an, I think, common kind of concept which we find out amongst the students when they are working in their educational institutions. They would like to achieve, let's say, the grades. They would like to achieve success. They would try to excel in a particular kind of situation. Similarly, the workers who are working in an organization, they would like to achieve something. And when we look at the achievement, we might be looking into some kind of goals. So what are these goals? Are these goals identified by the worker, identified by the officer, identified by the students, for example? Now, these could be the goals, and in order to achieve those goals, a person has to act. He or she has to perform certain acts. Now, when we are looking into those acts and looking into the goals, if the goals are clearly set, these are defined, then perhaps we know that we have to move in that direction. We can take certain steps, and those steps might be a process of achieving those goals. And what actually makes the person move in that direction, that is part of this achievement motivation. Motivation is more like moves a person to take an action for the achievement of those goals. This is an observed kind of reality. If we know the factors, what makes this variation, then prediction about the level of achievement motivation can be made, and finally it may be controlled. Now, the idea is that if we know the goals of, let's say, of a particular individual, the student or the worker, and the person takes actions to achieve those goals, then we are trying to find out that what makes the person to move in that direction to achieve those goals. Is it some kind of need of a person? If the person doesn't fulfill that need, what will happen? Is it the question of the survival of an individual? Now, what makes the person to move in that direction? That's okay, if we are looking into that achievement motivation, as I said earlier, is it a reality? I would say yes, it is a reality. Okay, what is the picture of that reality? We see that people are working towards the achievement of certain goals. Why are they working to the achievement of those goals? What makes them move? What makes them persistent? What makes them, let's say, continuously working hard for the achievement of those goals? Now, that is the kind of reality, that's the kind of picture of achievement motivation. Now, theoretically speaking, what explains that achievement motivation? What could be the different concepts which could be part of this particular, let's say, scenario? Can we identify those concepts? And if we can identify those concepts are actually the building blocks of this particular, let's say, framework. And those concepts will be arranged in such a way that there is some kind of linkage between those concepts. And when we are trying to build the linkages, we are trying to develop logic for that. We are trying to develop some kind of explanation, and that explanation is more like building a theory. So that is how I start with this achievement motivation as an example for let's say, building some kind of theoretical framework. So I started with the imagination of that concept, conceptual kind of thinking about that, an imagination of that concept. So how do we look at that? Why people are motivated to achieve certain goals? Why are they moving in that particular direction? What energizes these individuals to take an action, take different steps? And when we are looking at why, that is where I think the reasoning comes. That's where the logic comes. That's where the explanation comes. That's where the theory comes. So that is how I look at that achievement motivation. If we know, we can see that some people have a higher level of achievement motivation, others have less level of achievement motivation. And if we can find out what could be the factors for moving individuals to achieve certain goals, then perhaps we can look into those factors. We can make changes in those factors, and those changes could have an effect on the achievement levels of the individuals. When we look at the achievement levels, more like it's a measurement of those achievements. It's more like an evaluation of those achievements. So what could be the antecedents of those achievements? And antecedents here, the concept which have been, I think, used for that is motivation. So there could be levels of motivation. If we can control this motivation, then we can see that how this controlling of motivation or changing in the level of motivation can produce different levels of achievement. Evaluation can be considered over here with respect to the achievement. Now, people can have different levels of achievements. Now, it could be compared between the individuals, and even it can be, I think, applicable on the same individual. When we are comparing individuals, well, their levels of achievement could be different. But when we are looking at the same individual, his or her achievement could be different, let's say, over a period of time 1 and time 2. And there, as I said earlier, what could be the factors? If we know the factors, if we can tinker with those factors, then perhaps the motivation could be changed. Motivational factors could be, let's say, varied. And with that variation, we can expect some kind of change in the achievement as well. So that's the kind of connection which we see, that the theory provides a logical connection between, let's say, different concepts, different phenomenon, different factors. And when I look at that, we see once again this concept of achievement motivation. Intentional goal-directed actions. These are actions which people choose, acts of choice, and vigorous struggle to get those goals. So one is very clear about those goals, and once he has identified those, then we see that the person has the knowledge, has the skills, has the stamina, the time to reach those goals. Individuals' desire for significant accomplishments, mastering the skills, control. So that is how we look at these things. That's the achievement. And as I said, the two concepts, achievement, motivation. Now, motivation, as I said earlier, is more like an urge to move in certain direction. So if the goal is set, what is to be achieved, then we look into what factors actually makes a person to take an action. What is the stimulus which moves an individual? Is it the inner kind of urge? How people take an action? So there could be variety of factors which can move a person in a certain direction. Let's look at those. The force that energizes, directs, and sustains a person to perform an act. It could be one reason, could be number of reasons for the achievement of those goals. If we look into those kind of factors, when we look into the literature, and in the literature we come across lots of information, lots of theories which are already there, that what motivates a people. I think McClelland's theory is very prominent in that, and there three kinds of needs have been identified: the need for power, the need for affiliation, the need for achievement. And we look into those needs actually make the people to move in a certain direction. There is a need for power. The power on what? Power on, let's say, resources, power on the skills, power on, let's say, products, power on something which could be put under one's control. So that power actually motivates an individual. That need for power motivates an individual to take an action. And there is a specified kind of goal. That goal could be that need. That need is to control something, control the productivity, control the market, for example. That, I think, is one of the motivating factors. That's the stimulus. That's the move. That's the motive which makes a person to move in a direction. There could be another need which they call as need for affiliation. Affiliation with certain circles, affiliation with management. Affiliation could also be getting membership in certain professional kind of organization. Now it depends who is this person. If it's a professional kind of individual, just like a teacher, just like a chartered accountant, just like a medical professional, now they might be looking for membership to certain organizations, like to be affiliated with certain, let's say, organization. So that's a need. Now that, in order to fulfill that need, individuals may be motivated to take action. So the goal is to be prominent. Goal is to have a control on one's resources. The goal is to, let's say, achieve some level in productivity. Goal is to compete the peer groups. So competition might also be there. And because of that, person wants to be at a certain level. So that need might be one of the requirements which motivates the individual to move in that direction. Similarly, we have another need which is called need for achievement. The desire for significant accomplishments, like having competition with others. This could be achieving certain standards of excellence, maybe moving in a direction where a person is producing some commodity and maintaining certain standards of excellence, having some brand names, and that might be giving a competitive kind of edge over the competitors. And in order to have that edge, in order to have that excellence, the person is energized to move in that particular direction. So these three needs, the need for power, the need for affiliation, and need for achievement could be the motives at the back of individual's behavior, which pushes an individual to take the resources in its control and achieve the certain goals. We also see that, as I pointed out earlier, there could be levels of motivation. These depend upon the strength of the need, how much importance the person gives to this particular need. So that is where individual looks into the motivation levels. Also, what is the reinforcement? If the person is moving in a certain direction, taking certain action for the achievement of those goals, what is the reinforcement? Is he or she achieving certain successes, and how those successes are being interpreted by others? What kind of, let's say, impression or what kind of feedback a person is getting? What kind of rewards a person is getting? That is also affecting the level of motivation, and that level of motivation then affects the how much exertion the person is making for the achievement of those goals, and how those goals become sustainable for the continuation of the achievement of certain goals. Also, one could say that these are motivations for achieving the goals that could be observable. There could also be possibility that the person has a certain intrinsic kind of urges, not necessarily that having a control over others, but one could be motivated by such factors that a person is looking for a challenging kind of job, person is trying to create something on his own. Now, these challenging jobs might be more like self-fulfilling kind of urge in an individual, but certainly I would say that it has a basis for moving in certain direction. There is some kind of context, some kind of motivating force to move in a certain direction, whether it results in tangible kind of let's say achievements or intangible kind of achievements, but certainly there are motives to give a push to a person, urges a person to move in a certain direction. Now, if we are looking at the achievement motivation framework, then I would simply say that try to look into a framework in the literature. If the framework is already there, its theoretical framework is already there, there is no harm in picking up that theoretical framework for your research. See if you are comfortable in picking up the existing framework, okay, elaborate that and try to apply it to the particular research which you are trying to formulate in your proposal. Now, that framework may be already tested. That framework may have already gotten a lot of, let's say, comments on that. Could be critical appreciation over there too. So you have something ready-made, and that ready-made is such where it has been tested, people have given comments on it, and if it is acceptable, that's fine. Modify it, okay, fine. If that kind of thing is not available, and if you are not happy with the existing kind of frameworks in the literature, I would say develop your own framework. And now I would come up with some kind of let's say steps with respect to the development of that framework. And for that, I would say identify the relevant variables, specify the logical relationship between different variables leading to formulating the propositions and sequential arrangement of the propositions. So what I'm saying is that if you are not happy with the available frameworks, let's say that you want to develop your own. Now, for developing your own, let's look at the ingredients. Ingredients are the relevant variables. Now, what could be the possible relevant variables relevant to the topic of your study? Now, these relevant variables have to be identified. Where do you get those variables? Of course, those variables are available in the literature. If you look into the literature, okay, that will help you in the identification of the variables. Rather, one of the, I think, objectives of reviewing the literature is that we do not miss any of those relevant variables. So your own experience, the literature, so let's make a list of those variables. Call it as an inventory of those variables. So once we have the list of those variables, can we develop the linkages between those variables? Can we say that that one variable A is related with B, and if the two variables are related, there perhaps when you say that, it requires explanation for it. It requires logic, that why do you say that A is related with B? That's where the theory comes. So logical explanation of the relationship between A and B, now that has to be constructed. Now that relationship or that logic comes from your own experience. That logic comes from the previous researches which people have conducted. Now that review of literature here again helps us for developing the logical kind of relationship between one variable and another one. As I said earlier, now this logic provides glue between these two variables. When you are developing logic, you are making statements. These statements are actually the propositions. So when you are saying that A is related with B and you are giving the reasoning for it, logical kind of reasonings for it, you are actually developing theoretical argumentation. Now that leads to the formulation of propositions. So maybe you have a number of variables and pick up one variable and see if that is related with the second, related with the third, related with the fourth. And for each relationship, you try to give the direction of relationship. You try to develop the logical argumentation. And on the basis of this logical argumentation, you are going to come up with the number of propositions. Because after building that argumentation for telling the relationship between 1 and 2, you have to make some kind of conclusion. And that conclusion can be in the form of a proposition. In other words, you are going to develop a number of propositions. So we can have a stock of these propositions. And once we have all those propositions, can we interrelate those propositions? Can we put these propositions in some kind of sequential order? If we can put them in a sequential order, that is actually the job of the theory. That's the theoretical kind of framework. Because a theory, as I said earlier, is simply an interrelated set of propositions. Now, these interrelated set of propositions provides us the broad framework. These propositions have the variables. These variables could be the stepping stones. These could provide the foundations for this particular framework. that framework is going to lead us to, let's say, the conducting of the research. That is how we try to develop it. If we look at the achievement motivation kind of thing, so need achievement relevant variables could be power over the job, the skills, the people, the resources, competing the peers. Affiliation, we had another need, affiliation with certain circles, with management, membership with organizations, achieving aspirations, desire for significant accomplishments, mastery of skills, social recognition, self-concept, meeting the standards of excellence, expectancy of success. Now, these are some of the, let us say, variables with these three kinds of needs which we identified earlier, as these needs were borrowed from McClelland. Now, in each, let's develop the argument. Now, I would give this argument just like this. The competition with peers needs control over resources like the workforce skills. Given the situation, an advantage in workforce skills can provide an edge over the competitors in terms of efficient achievement of goals. Now, this is theorizing the relationship. When we are theorizing the relationship, what I said was, okay, we are trying to have a control over the situations, over the resources. We are competing with others, competing with peers, and for that competition, a person needs, let's say, mastery over the skills in himself as well as in the workforce if he's having a managing the organization. So with this skilled kind of workforce, he is in a position to produce, let's say, quality products. If he's producing quality products, maybe he is developing some kind of goodwill and also meeting certain standards of excellence. So there could be a standard quality kind of situation. Now, that is how a person is moving, and these items and these variables are connected with each other. And if we have that, then perhaps we can connect them, we can build up the logic, build up the arguments, and come up with a proposition. And the proposition which I am proposing over here is that more the competition with peers, the more the need for strengthening workforce skills. Now, that is competition, and for competition needs investment of resources, investment in the human resources, investment in the skills of the people, and these skills lead to quality products, and quality products are standardized. Person might build some kind of brand names, and this is how starting with the competition, building up the logic, connecting these let's say variables with each other with the help of the argument, we come up with the proposition that more the competition with the, let's say, peers, more the chances of increasing the control over, let's say, human skills, and better the product which we are getting. So that is how we have different variables, connect them, and come up with some kind of proposition. We can also say the more the control over workforce resource, the more the control on quality standards. Another one, achieving the quality standards in product and social recognition. Products evaluated by quality standards, upholding the standards of excellence provides recognition, which in turn generates a high self-concept like the brand name. Therefore, you can say the higher the upholding of standards of excellence, the higher the recognition. That's another kind of proposition. So, starting with the, let's say, control over the skills, we are connecting this resource with the let's say, standards with the quality products. And if we have that, we come up with another proposition, as I said, that higher the upholding of the standards of excellence, the higher the recognition. And that recognition gives the individual high self-concept, high status, recognition in the, let's say, amongst the peers, and could also be on the basis of that recognition, person could move to some kind of linkages with others as well. Social recognition and desire for affiliation with certain circles. These circles could be the individuals, maybe some models, high profile kind of individuals. Affiliation could be with the groups. Affiliation could be with the organization. And that, I think, a standardized kind of situation urges an individual to be visible, and with that visibility, the person gets some kind of high self-concept, and that is where the, let's say, proposition comes in. And that affiliation, as although I borrowed it from McLaren, but others also talk about that kind of affiliation. Maslow is one who has been talking about the hierarchy of needs, and amongst the hierarchy of needs, perhaps affiliation was on top of near top of the whole of this hierarchy. So affiliation itself is reflected of further recognition and a drive towards the need for power, entry into decision-making corridors of the profession. Therefore, the higher the social recognition, higher the self-concept, the greater the desire for affiliation. So recognition, from where a person gets the recognition, on what basis the person gets the recognition. Recognition a person gets on the basis of the achievement of the needs, based on the basis of the quality product, on the basis of the maintenance of the standards of that quality, gets the recognition by virtue of, let's say, a brand name, if we are talking about the production of some commodities. So that is how we can move from one variable to the next, and there could be a proposition. The higher the, let's say, recognition of a person with respect to the products, higher the need for recognition, higher the need for affiliation, and that's where we can make a proposition. Now, let me say that we have made so many propositions, and there could be many more propositions. In this short time, I may not be able to make all those propositions. But let us say I have, let's say, 3-4 propositions. Let me share those with you. And if I look at those propositions, can we develop a linkage, sequential kind of linkage in these propositions? And if I look at that, it is like this. The more the competition with peers, the more the need for strengthening of workforce skills, the more the control over workforce resources, the more the control on quality standards, the higher the upholding of standards of excellence, the higher the recognition, just like the status and self-concept of brand name. The higher the social recognition, higher the self-concept, the greater the desire for affiliation. And from all this kind of linkage, you can develop the hypothesis, higher the achievement motivation, the greater the effort to achieve the goals. Now, this is how I picked up a number of variables, and I tried to put before you how those can be linked. And once those are linked, these end up in certain propositions. And I had number of propositions, And I put those propositions before you in such a way that one proposition generates the next proposition, and the next proposition generates the next following proposition, and that gives you a kind of framework. And from that framework, you can derive a hypothesis, as I said, that higher the motivation of a person, higher the achievement levels of an individual. Now, that is a thesis, that's a hypothesis which can be put to test. This is one way to demonstrate that how the motivation can have an effect on the achievement level of the people. At the same way, we can also look at that achievement motivation can be taken as the factors for, let's say, organizational citizenship behavior. You are very familiar with this particular concept. OCB is usually considered as something which is an altruistic kind of thing, but you can look at that from the, let's say, motivational angle as well. The actions of the people can be looked at from certain motivational viewpoint. That person is doing something, वो चाहे स्वाब के लिए कर रहा है, किस काम के लिए कर रहा है, उसके पीछे मोटिवेशन ज़रूर है. एंड अचीवमेंट मोटिवेशन की अगर बात करें तो बहुत सारी चीज़ें जो OCB में आ रही हैं, those could be the motivating factors for doing certain, let's say, activities, helping the people, guiding the people, sharing the information. I think in that way, we can look at number of, let's say, factors over here too. And by looking into the number of those factors, we can take motivation achievement or achievement motivation as, let's say, the starting point with respect to the OCB. And from there, we can further develop arguments, we can have the propositions, we can have the hypothesis emerging out of that. So that is how I would say that the theoretical framework provides a blueprint for carrying out the research. The stronger the, let's say, blueprint, the stronger the logic, stronger the argumentation, I think greater the chances that our research is likely to meet the objectives of that particular study. So इस तरह से आप या तो बना बनाया theoretical framework लें अगर आपको पसंद है और अगर मिलता है, और अगर नहीं तो मैं ये कहूँगा कि आप अपना theoretical framework खुद बना सकते हैं, और जब खुद बनाएंगे तो maybe you feel take pride in whatever you have done. It might be in itself a sort of achievement. So let us see how can you develop all that. Thank you very much.